Some of you aren't convinced that Hey Gears have what it takes to make miniatures. They tell me you doubt their proprietary hardware and resins. Well, let me tell you something. In answer to your criticisms, Hey Gears have made a brand freaking new resin specifically for tabletop minis that they're calling PAP 10. And PAP 10, along with this big, fat, futuristic, sci-fi looking, layer slaying, Ultracraft Reflex 3D printer here, are gonna rip your doubts to fucking shreds and put your fears to bed. I should probably beep that. So let's print some bloody miniatures, as we so often like to do here, and answer the question, is it all just marketing bullshit, or have the Hey Gears engineers cooked up something truly worthy of the title miniature resin?
I actually can't give you an objective answer to that question, as, full disclosure, Hey Gears have sponsored this video, so please consider this one an advertisement.
And who's on the chopping block today? We haven't reviewed a miniature line in a while. Mini Raider's starting to look a little bit dusty. There is no other creator higher on my to-do list than Station Forge, and I'm honestly a little disappointed with myself that it's taken me this long to get around to covering this skilled modeler. I spent a lot of time moaning and complaining about pre-supported files on this channel, and it's artists like Station Forge who helped light that fire under my arse in the first place. Station Forge is one of those creators whose STLs I was just always eyeing off ever since I got into 3D printing, thinking to myself,
oh yeah, I am totally going to make an AdMech army or kill team one day, and it's 100% going to be Station Forge files.
Well, that day came, maybe a couple of years ago now, I don't remember exactly when, and I bought some files, and after taking one look at them, I thought, nah, fuck that. The pre-supported files inspired very little confidence in me, and frankly, seeing them in the state they were in was a real kick in the teeth. Took the wind out of my sails, and I abandoned that project for something else. Anyway, while I get this printer out of storage and dust it off, let's have a listen to some marketing speak about this newfangled miniatures resin by Hey Gears. PAP 10 production resin. Highly reproducible down to the smallest detail, excellent molding ability, high dimensional stability, high performance stability, resistant to aging. Alright, cool. Let's drop it into the printer and give it a whirl. First thing I noticed compared to Hey Gears' other resins is that this one has way less of an odor, which my nose greatly appreciates. The Ultracraft Reflex, after connecting to my Wi-Fi network, wanted to update itself, so that's pretty cool, and I'm glad to see Hey Gears have been continuing to work on and improve this thing behind the scenes. After logging into the Blueprint Slicer website, I discovered they've added a new profile specifically for their new PAP 10 miniatures resin, and this profile sports a 30 micron layer height for extra detail crispiness. So anyway, back to Station Forge. Earlier this year, they made a post about how they've hired a professional pre-supportist and will be going back and overhauling all of their pre-supported files to bring them up to a high level of quality. Phenomenal news, and I applaud Station Forge for the commitment and the effort, and this isn't actually the first time I've commended Station Forge for this here on the channel. I printed an absolutely epic Reaver Titan proxy called the Asimus War Construct by Solwhite Studios, and while it's an amazing kit and I'm very happy with how it turned out, I was critical of Solwhite Studios for the hurdles I had to overcome with those old Asimus files. So real quick, I just wanted to give Solwhite Studio a big shout out for making a similar commitment and effort to go back through their back catalog and bring their old files in line with a higher standard for quality. So amazing stuff, Solwhite Studio and Station Forge. You're both setting a great example for the industry as a whole, and more STL miniatures companies should take note here. I didn't know what Station Forge files I would be printing when I started this video. I just knew I wanted to print Station Forge. So I jumped on over to their My Mini Factory store and had a quick browse to see if anything jumped out at me. And sure enough, almost immediately, these little dudes grabbed my attention. The Scavenger Junkins. They're so cute. And this thing, the Socrates Speeder. Socrates? I'm gonna go with Socrates. Let's print the Speeder first. Station Forge haven't given us any STL files, only Lightsheet files and OBJ files. I'm sure the larger file sizes of the OBJ files won't give me any grief as I upload them to Blueprint. Shit. To try and speed things up, I tried converting the files into STL to bring down the file size. There's this handy app which lets you batch process 3D files called Spin3D by NCH Software. And one of the things you can do with it is convert a whole bunch of 3D files from one format to another in just a couple of clicks. And so I fired that up and told it to convert all of these OBJ files into STL. This worked well and even managed to bring the total file size down by about half. But annoyingly though, this reoriented all the files sideways. I then remembered Lychee also has batch 3D tools, and since I was running out of time before I had to leave for work, I changed plan and decided to print the scavenger junkets first, since they're a lot smaller in size already, and converted them over to STL using Lychee. Thankfully this time the orientation was preserved, and the total file size here was surely not going to be an issue. Unfortunately, the files didn't finish uploading before I had to leave for work. Unfortunately, the files were still uploading when I got home from work. This is definitely the fault of my shitty Australian internet. Nah, my bad. Turns out I just missed this message about how things have migrated to the desktop client since I last used this machine. After logging in to the desktop client, I was really pleased to see I could just drag the files in to process locally with no need to upload to some remote server. Oh hey, they've also increased the file size limit per print job now to 2 GB. Nice. Sorry about that. So after preparing my print in Blueprint Slicer, I sent it over the Wi-Fi to the Ultracraft Reflex and begun my first print of Station Forge miniatures. This printer has built-in heating right in the vat and the ability to mix resin in the vat too, and these are two tasks that normally take place at the beginning of every print. But it seems like on the new firmware, neither of these things occurred and the printer just got straight to printing. I asked HeyGears about this and turns out they've been busy optimizing this thing because in the latest firmware, these two functions only kick into gear when the ambient temperature exceeds 20 degrees Celsius. I really appreciate that change because it actually speeds up printing considerably, not having to wait on those processes if they aren't strictly necessary. They also did all of this stuff. First print turned out perfect. Or did it? Supports fell away, models look good initially. Let's be fussy a little later on though. I tried converting those speeder files again, only this time using Lychee and its clearly superior batch processing. I tried converting the speeder files again, this time using Lychee and its clearly superior batch processing. Using Lychee and its clearly superior... You bitch. Okay, so something about the speeder files was making Lychee really unhappy, so I figured I'd try my luck using Spin 3D again, but this time adding a rotation modifier to counteract the rotation fuckery from before. I quickly opened one of the sideway files from earlier inside of Blender to see which way it needed correcting, and I found that adding a negative 90-degree offset to the x-axis is what was needed, and with that they turned out perfect this time.
It worked.
I then remembered Blueprint Studio on the PC doesn't need me to upload files to an offshore server, and therefore the smaller file size was not even necessary, and therefore I just wasted all that time and energy on converting these OBJ files into STL. Shoot me in the face. Second print turned out perfect, I think. More scrutiny later. Supports pull away nicely, nothing appears to have failed, couldn't be happier. HeyGears have developed PAP10 resin to be the king of detail. A resin so sharp, your mother would have a heart attack if she saw you running with it. PAP10 resin can reproduce pillars and holes all the way down to 0.15mm and 0.18mm respectively. HeyGears also care about that detail over time as well, and tell me this stuff won't degrade or deform in the long haul. These miniatures printed in PAP10 resin, at least when we're talking about detail, look absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure will be a total joy to paint up later on. If you would like to try HeyGears PAP10 production resin for yourself, be sure to check the link down below in the video description, as well as the topmost pinned comment for the latest discounts. Right now! So something I noticed here is these parts aren't perfectly clean after going through the wash machine. And this is entirely my fault because I have not changed out this alcohol since the previous HeyGears video. And this machine since then has seen a lot of use, so that alcohol is absolutely filthy and way overdue for a change. Unfortunately, I've really screwed myself over here because, as some of you may know already, models that haven't been properly washed can be an absolute nightmare to try and assemble with superglue. And it really doesn't help either when your superglue is the most bottom shelf garbage tier superglue there is. I really struggled putting this speeder together, like the little turret thing just kept wanting to fall over. And even getting the two main halves of the speeder bodies to hold together was a real pain in the ass. And I ended up resorting to a combination of clamps and blue tack to get this build over the finish line. Not the most fun I've had in the assembly process, that's for sure. But again, that's no criticism of Station Forge or HeyGears, to be clear. And this is just what you can expect if you don't wash your parts properly with any resin. Otherwise, the way it goes together I thought was great, like everything fit together well. And check out how cool these articulated wings are. While gluing these junkets down to their bases, I noticed a few areas where the supports hadn't quite worked out, like these spots here on their backpacks, or this dude's elbow in particular is quite bad. Looking at the 3D file, you can see he's supposed to have a sleeve coming down like this. Now, thankfully StationForge have included the .lys files here, which is great, because we can go in and have a look at what's going on more closely, and make some adjustments if needed.
So taking a closer look at this, you can see here he's got a 0.3mm right on the tip, and then a couple of other 0.3mm moving up this sleeve, supporting it here. This is fine, because it is such a small detail. However, I maybe just this one on the tip, just to make sure that it absolutely starts printing this sleeve, and the rest of these have something to connect up to. It would have made sense to make this a heavy, I believe, maybe like a 0.45, 0.5, something like that, just to be absolutely safe.
Now everyone's process here is different, supports are a contentious issue at the best of times, and when it comes to rating pre-supports, I think it's worth highlighting that my aim with projects like MiniRaider and videos like this isn't to arrive at some objective truth of what is a good pre-supported file and what isn't. Sure, there are some best practices to follow and rules of thumb and things that can be done to improve the end user experience, but really what I'm trying to do here is just push creators to care more about this aspect of their business. And I think since I initially started this channel and set out with that goal, we have seen tremendous strides toward it. And StationForge has definitely been a part of that, as the inclusion of .lys files here is a huge win for any files sold as pre-supported. However, having said all that, I would like to have seen a few extra supports used on these models and a greater use of stronger supports in key areas, specifically where an island first begins printing. These minis pass at first glance, but if I was really particular about my minis, I would definitely be editing these supports and reprinting them again. For me though, they're good enough for now. So I'm going to just roll with the punches and get these junkets painted up. As for StationForge miniatures, it's a tough call to make. Given I don't know anything about the PAP 10 profile and how Hey Gears tune their machines though, I'm hesitant to throw StationForge into B tier for print failures when clearly a big effort is being made by them to make this arm of their business solid. Therefore, I'm going to say StationForge has earned themselves an A tier rating. Of course, feel free to disagree with me over on MiniRaider, and you can find a complete description of the different tiers and how it all works over there as well. How about those files I bought way back though? Any update there? Well, I looked on My Mini Factory and it looks like no, sadly not. But it also appears like this particular kit is no longer publicly available. I don't know if that's because of DMCA or what, but it's clearly been superseded by this kit here. Shame that owners of the original kit didn't get that upgrade. I couldn't help but feel like the speeder would be riding a little too high with that flight stand the way it was, so I decided a little modification was in order. This would be a good chance to abuse the material a little too, and see how it holds up. The PAP 10 resin took this saw like a champ and didn't shatter at all, cutting cleanly, if however a little wonky. I improvised a small sanding surface here to fix this, before finally pinning the modified mount into place underneath the speeder with some coat hanger, along with a healthy serving of garbage tier superglue. Hopefully that holds together well. Here's something I haven't done in a while. A zenithal highlight through the airbrush. I've been dry brushing this step for ages, and it was honestly so refreshing to just go back and do this through an airbrush again. Familiar pink? Sure, why not? I blasted this all over the speeder till it was nice and saturated. Switching to the brush, I then started laying down this same pink on the scavenger's cloaks, but I felt some variation would be good here, and without straying too far, I think I managed to pull that off using Moody Mauve and creating varying mixes between these two shades. I started to pick out some details on the speeder using Vallejo acrylic metal color silver. Careful at first, I soon decided, fuck it, I'll be rough and fast and mask the mistakes with wear and tear later on. I started throwing down rough edge highlights with this silver, as well as roughly painting in wear on the wings and other forward-facing parts. Almost like this thing goes so fast that the wind rips the paint right off. For all the details under the cloaks, since they were pretty hard to reach, I decided to just go over all the shirts, belts, pants and boots together in grim black. It can feel a little funny skipping over details like this and just painting multiple things the same color, but honestly if you're into speed painting, give it a go sometime, because at the end when everything is said and done and you have a bunch of these down on a table together, they're gonna look awesome. Anyway, I tried giving that pink color a turn on their helmets too, as I thought that might help their heads pop a little more, but quickly decided that was shit and went hunting for another color. I then found an absolute goat of a speed paint called Burnt Moss, and I put this basically everywhere that was left to paint. Guns, gauntlets, arms, helmets, backpacks, accessories, all of it. 10 out of 10 filler color. Eager to keep painting with Burnt Moss, I wanted to see how it would look over the metallic parts on the speeder, so I slapped it on there too, and it gave a kind of cool gunmetal effect. I then chose to get really loose with it and started letting the brush go outside the lines onto the pink panels before deciding to just lean in all the way and dab it on all over with a tissue, really pushing this thing into a dirty and oily kind of territory. What am I fucking saying? Really turning up the filth and grime on this thing. Sure, it's not the best weathering technique, but it beats waiting for an oil paint to dry. Next up, and I don't think I've ever done this before, so it's a first for me, is I did some super fat and rough panel lining with it. And that just about finished off the speeder. I really like how this made the whole thing feel even more 3D. I don't know, worth the effort I think, and I'll try this technique again in future for sure. Returning to the scavengers, all that was left was their very fashionable neck wrap scarf thingos, and all I did to finish those off was use desolate brown and ruddy fur mixed together in varying degrees. To finish up, I then painted all the bases black before dry brushing them silver, along with all the burnt moss bits, and that was it. Painting done. Well, okay, I just got the draft back from Hey Gears of this video, and they've given me some feedback, and one of the things they would like me to change about the video is they would like me to include a more objective judgment with the pros and cons of the resin, the printer ecosystem, and my experience. So to just, I mean, that's awesome. I love that. I love that Hey Gears wants to be really transparent, because normally, you know, in like a paid situation like this, I consider it more of a showcase of a brand's product and not so much a review or whatever. But if Hey Gears is going to let me, then I'll tell you. All right, so the PAP 10 resin. Pros: very low odor. It's cheaper than other Hey Gears resin, it looks like. The prints look really good, but then the new profile that they've made in Blueprint Slicer to go along with the resin is a more finer, detailed profile. So it's hard to know there if it's the resin or the profile that's giving us the sharper looking prints, but the prints look really nice. These are some of my favorite that I've done in a while, and I'm very happy with them. Now, cons: it's brittle as fuck. It's very brittle. Now that's probably not going to suit a lot of you if you're just looking for a really reliable tabletop gaming miniatures resin, something that you can drop the miniature and not be too worried about parts breaking off or the thing just exploding into 1,000 pieces. Yeah, Hey Gears really seem to be selling this to painters, people who want to have the highest amount of detail reproduced in their prints as possible. It's all about that dimensional accuracy. So have they achieved that? You could be the judge. I mean, look at these miniatures. The other resin I used back when I did the other video with the Piper Makes models and the Riverside Minis models, those resins are really flexible and really durable. In my opinion, those are much better for tabletop miniatures than this new PAP 10 resin, if you care about the durability more than the detail. Okay, so in response to that, Hey Gears have just got back to me again with a couple of little videos, some tests of their own that they've done in-house of the resin, a drop test and a bend test. I mean, you can watch those right now and judge for yourself. Also, it is worth noting that the durability of any particular resin can vary depending on the actual model itself and for how long it was cured for. And for all the models in this video, I used a cure time of 5 minutes. Also, I was mistaken about the price. I actually thought it was about half the cost of what it actually is. So I'm going to move price into the cons list because it is actually quite an expensive resin. And in regards to the whole printing ecosystem, including this Ultracraft Reflex 3D printer, there's just too much to try and fit in here. So for now, if you're curious, you can just pause the video here to get a summary of my findings. And do let me know if you want to see an independently created video on the Hey Gears stuff. I, for one, think it's an important system that's definitely worth talking more about. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I genuinely had a lot of fun making it. And of course, a huge thank you to Hey Gears and PAP 10 Resin for their generous support of this channel. I love working with Hey Gears. They're a great team and they really care about their products, and you should definitely follow the link down below and check out this resin for yourself. I'm actually super grateful to Hey Gears for this one because little Mary here recently suffered this thing called gut stasis, where his entire digestive system just straight up seized up and stopped functioning. I had to rush him to emergency care where he stayed for 2 days, and without the support of Hey Gears, I don't know if I could have afforded to have made that decision, and I'm not sure that little Mary would still be with us here today. So seriously, thank you, Hey Gears. Sponsorships like Hey Gears are also helping me to hire an assistant editor to work on the videos with me and help me get them out faster. His name is Tebow, he's an absolute legend and a wizard, and his hands are all over the last 2 videos you've seen here on this channel, and particularly this one. So thank you, Tebow, as well for all your help. You are awesome to work with, good sir. And thank you, of course, to all my wonderful supporters over on buymeacoffee.com/once-in-a-six-side. You guys are the real heroes of this channel. I appreciate you all immensely. Alright, see you all back here really, really soon. And I think I actually feel confident saying that for a change. Alright, bye-bye.